I take dreams seriously. I don't think any of them are random.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we work out a lot of stuff in our dream world that we can't get to in our limited conscious world.
I'd like to welcome to the show, Alan Cohen. How you doing, Alan?
Hey, good to be with you, man.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, my friend. I appreciate not only your work and the things you've been doing, but I appreciate you coming on the show. I think it's going to be a fun conversation.
My pleasure.
So, first question, sir, how did you begin your spiritual journey?
I remember when I was about 5 years old, I said to a friend, wouldn't it be funny if we were all dead and we're just dreaming we're alive? And now many years ago, I realized it kind of closer to the truth than I realized. When I was a teenager, I became an Orthodox Jew, which gave me 7 years of strict discipline. And then I kind of outgrew it. And I turned to psychedelic drugs. And Ram Dass became my guru, which led me to an amazing teacher and healer in New York named Hilda Charlton. Studied with her for many years. Found A Course in Miracles and worked with lots of channels, worked with Daryl Anka and Bashar, as you know, and Abraham and some others. So it's been a really great ride from, one momentous connection to another. I feel very blessed.
So from an Orthodox Jew to psychedelics and Ram Dass, it's a fairly large jump, as they say. It's a fairly large jump. Yeah. Did you actually work with Ram Dass or just his teachings?
I work with him. He taught me early in the days, but then when he moved to Maui many years later, just a few miles from me, and we began to co-teach.
Oh my God.
And so that was a great honor. I spent a lot of time with him. So that was a real blessing while he was on the planet. Yeah.
So let me ask you, because I haven't spoken to anyone who's actually worked with Ram Dass one-on-one. What was it like during those times? I mean, I've seen every documentary possible about Ram Dass. I'm a fan of his and I've read his work. And he's such a fascinating trajectory as well, from the psychedelics to the Maharishi, if I'm not mistaken, and going through that whole process. From the time period that you were with him, he was already past the psychedelic space, or was he still? Right. He was past the psychedelics at that point.
Right.
So, what was it like being around someone like Ram Dass?
Well, he was a rare person, is because he actually walked his talk. Not everybody does. I mean, we all have our high points and low points. But he was very humble, always stayed in his heart, very kind. He had a great sense of humor. Like even after he had a stroke, he had a debilitating stroke, and he was in a wheelchair for the last 20 years of his life. And I would go to his house for dinner, and he would be joking about his arm not moving, and he'd do these monkey sounds for me to open the door. And, there was a part of him that really was able to take his human predicament lightly and play with it and witness it rather than be stuck in it. So he's one of the greatest teachers by example. A lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. He talked the talk and he walked the walk. It was a great blessing to be with him. He was pretty funny. It was always, he never lost a sense of humor, even to the last moments.
So let me ask you, because there's so many, that's a really great lesson that be taught here, is that we as humans walking this, this path, things happen to us that we don't want to happen to us, and things that we have no control over. And we either choose to embrace it, to accept it, or to fight or be angry or bitter about it. And the story that you just told about Ram Dass, most people would have been angry and bitter of losing, being stuck in a wheelchair for 20 years, no less. What tips do you have for somebody going through, something as serious as that, or something lighter, and just accepting things as they come to you in life, as opposed to, being angry about it? Because I'm suffering through the hopefully the tail end of COVID. I caught it on my vacation, and it is, I literally caught it on my vacation, and I haven't been on vacation in 2.5 years. And we planned it. It was a family thing. We had 2 or 3 good days, and then we all went down like dominoes, and it was just like horrible. And as I was going through it, I felt like this isn't right. I work hard. Why did this happen to me? Like, why? And
Yeah.
my whole family was going through it, and we're still struggling. Of course, my kids
Yeah.
bounce back in seconds, but my
Yeah.
wife and I are still going through stuff.
Yeah.
I never once during this process, though, was angry about it. I was just kind of like a little perturbed, I would say, at certain points. Like, hey,
Yeah.
do I really need to drive 3 hours with a fever because we have no hotel room? And other than
Yeah. Yeah.
things like that. So how do you, I'm using myself as an example, but
Yeah.
what advice do you have for people going through things like this?
It's funny you should mention that. I'll tell you a similar story in a minute. But sometimes we can change our environment, but always we can change our attitude. It's, our mind and our perspective are the only thing we truly have control over in the world. Because as you said, everything changes around us. So we did a retreat. I did a coach training retreat a couple months ago. And this was way after COVID was over, quote, quote. And, we thought it was safe to go back in the water. And out of about 26 people at the retreat, about 8 people came down with COVID. And we discovered that one of them tested positive the day before the end of the retreat. And so that night we had a COVID test party. And we had we could to keep people safe. So we got kids for everybody. And we went into the lobby of this lodge. We put on some music. We got some pizza. And we're busy swabbing each other's noses and laughing. And then when we got the negative, they all marched by and applauded. And it was the most amazing experience of people taking what could be a negative and turning it into a positive. And then of the people who did go home with it, I kept in touch with them, and their attitudes were amazing. Wow, I finally have some time to be home. Wow, it's a rest period for me. I wouldn't have taken this on my own. Wow, I'm really going in and remembering who I am, independent of what's going on in my body. So I say every minus is half of a plus that's waiting for a stroke of vertical awareness. So we can take even a COVID or, God bless Ramdas, a stroke, and find some way to look at it that's empowering rather than debilitating. The body may be debilitated, but the mind and soul don't have to be.
It is all about perspective. It is all about how you choose to look at things. Like I said, I'm not happy about what happened. I was really looking forward to a relaxing vacation, not one with shivers and fevers. But
were there any spiritual lessons for you? Did you gain any insights or perspective that you wouldn't have had if it hadn't happened? What was the gift for you?
I think the gift for me going through this is that I think I was stretched a little too thin, too many things going on.
Exactly.
Taking on too much stuff. And this is the way of the universe saying to me, you need to reevaluate what you're doing and how you want to exert your energy and things like that. And if you don't want to listen, we're going to make you listen. And
exactly.
And I'm very thankful that I got to see Niagara Falls in a normal way, but I wish there would have been another way they would have told me this situation, but it is what it is. Look, it happened to me when I moved to my new home about a week or two after we were fully moved in, like we moved all the boxes in and things. I broke my ankle. Just broke my ankle. And I was so upset. And I was like, you really, really? And it was the point where I needed to slow down because I was just going and going and going. Something needed to slow me down. And anytime there's been big things like that in my life, I remember I got into a car accident once. And I was the one that hit another car. And I was going through a lot of turmoil in relationships at that time in my life. And someone was saying, you got to wake up. You can't keep going down this path. So it's always a little something. I've always found even the worst things that happen to you, when they happen, you feel that they're bad. But in hindsight, when you look back, you go, oh, that was a blessing.
I think Teilhard de Chardin said, life must be lived forward, but it can only be understood backward.
Very true. Wow, that's wise words right there. It's so true. Things that happen to you that you thought that was the literal end of the world for you when you were, I mean, look at high school, for God's sakes. I mean, everything was the end of the world in high school, but you look back and go, oh my God, thank God I didn't go out on a date with that girl.
Yeah.
Or thank God I didn't get that job, or thank God I didn't get on that reality show.
Yeah.
It would have ruined my career.
Amen.
Kind of things. But at the time, oh my God, my whole world's coming to an end. But you're absolutely right. You have to look. The only way you can read it and understand it is by looking back.
Well, look at the pandemic. I mean, that knocked the whole world on its butt, and everybody had a very clear choice. Do I go into fear and defensiveness and protectionism, or do I somehow use this to grow spiritually? And a lot of people were totally paranoid. A lot of people were reaching out to help each other. And it was a blessed time for so many people. They actually talked to their teenage kid for the first time in years. They actually, had meals with their family and sat down. I live in Hawaii, and there's a period of non-tourism for like 2 or 3 months, and the reefs started to come back. I snorkeled, and these dead gray reefs started to come to life again, and wonderful wildlife in the ocean started to come in again. I thought, wow, this was what the world was like before we messed it up. So in many ways, it was a real vision of how good it could get when we take a situation and milk the spiritual gift from it. That's the only way I can see that it works.
There was the late great Wayne Dyer always used to say, he was like, I just flew in from Maui because someone had to. So I say the same thing to you. You live in Hawaii because someone has to. I mean, someone has to
do it. Yeah,
someone has to do it. Might as well
hold
be
the vibration. Yeah.
So what brought you to A Course in Miracles?
Well, I saw an ad for it in Psychology Today, and it was a very hokey ad. And it showed this guy, it wasn't an ad, it was a story. And it showed this guy walking down the street with these 3 golden books falling to him from the heavens. So this is crazy, man. This is just another psychic trip. Yeah. And I really was put up miracles. I don't want to, wave my hand and make a holy ass. I don't need to do that. And then a voice said, just do this. It was just like that deep inner voice that said, I don't care what your personality is saying, just do it. So I sent away for the books. And in those days, there were 3 hardcover books. And I opened the first book and I looked at the introduction. This is A Course in Miracles. Oh, man, it just jumped out at me. It was like, remember when Batman used to punch somebody and go pow?
Pow!
It was like,
by the 60s,
like,
yeah.
I was like, oh man, it just spoke to me at a very, very deep place. And I realized this was truth. This was a message from God. And the voice said, just stay with this and you're going to gain a lot from it. So I did. That was 42 years ago, 1980.
Now, who wrote A Course in Miracles? I mean, I know there's a physical person who wrote it.
Yeah.
But who's the ghostwriter, if you will?
Well, the ghostwriter is Jesus Christ. And, kind of interesting because he picked a cynical, professional, clinical psychologist, atheist, Helen Schuckman, as his channel, the most unlikely channel in the world. But they had a soul contract, you understand? And so in the Course, Jesus many, many times make references to stuff he said in the New Testament and to events like his crucifixion and resurrection. So there's no doubt that the voice that is channeling it is that of Jesus Christ. You don't have to believe it. The material stands on its own merit without believing it. But if Jesus is going to speak to us today, I think that would be a voice he would choose. Now,
you were mentioning earlier that, like you said when you were younger, that the world, maybe we're dead and we're just dreaming that we're alive. Very, very Matrix style, if you will. That's why I love the Matrix, and it has so many spiritual layers and onions on them, and cool kung fu, obviously, and Keanu Reeves. But this great illusion that we are walking in, which is the physical world that is so intoxicating. What advice do you have about breaking through that illusion, understanding that in many ways we are walking the matrix, we are in the matrix, we are not in the real place of spirit and where we are truly who we truly are? Where I use this analogy a lot, and I've said it on the show before, because I come from the film industry, that when you're on set, the set is the world, and the
Right.
characters
Right.
the characters are characters written by the writers, but they're actors who walk in. So if Anthony Hopkins comes on set and wants to play Hannibal Lecter, he's like, I want to play a cannibalistic, lovable cannibal in a horror movie to see what that feels like. He goes in, he plays the scenes, and at the end, the director yells cut, and he goes home, for the day. But the insanity that we're in is that we still believe that we're actually Hannibal Lecter, that we are the characters that we play, and not truly the actor playing it. So that's my analogy to The Great Illusion. I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, there's an Italian proverb that says, when the chess game is over, the king and the pawn go back into the same box.
Wow, that's deep. Oh, I love that.
That's where Hannibal Lecter goes when the movie's over.
Right.
And so we do choose to play parts, and we're the actor more than the role. And to answer your initial question, Alex, when I'm in my wrong mind, when I feel like I am limited by my body and 3 dimensions only, it doesn't feel so good because I want this and I want that and I can't have that and I'm upset about this. It's just like it sets me into a whole matrix of limitation and fear and sickness and death and conflict and what a world we've created. When I meditate or pray or do my Course in Miracles lesson or walk in nature, I connect with a place in me that's so much deeper and so much more rewarding. And if I could give it a voice, it would say, this is real. Remember this. And so I think we all, walk in the contrast of getting sucked into the physical matrix. And then we have our moments when we rise above it and we remember who we truly are. And those moments are gifts from God, if you will, to keep us on track and help us not go any deeper into the quicksand. So bottom line is we have to really explore what do we experience when we're in our right mind and what we experience when we're in our wrong mind, and keep choosing between the two, hopefully choosing more and more the right mind.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because you're right. Most of the times we live in the physical and we have glimpses of the connection of eternity, and not eternity, but of the spirit, of the higher place that we're all from. And as you get older or become more skilled at being able to tap into that, life changes for you, I found. And meditation is a very big part of that. And walking in nature. I mean, you go to Yellowstone National Park or Yosemite, or stand in front of a sequoia, and you're there. Like it's this, you're connecting to something so much larger than you, where most of us live in the minutia of the day, that stuff that doesn't even matter. I always tell people like, oh, I'm angry at this person. I'm like, in 50 years, does it matter?
Yeah.
In 100 years, the thing that you're so worried about right now, is it going to matter really?
Yeah. Well, Bashar gives the mantra, so what? A lot of people tell him his problem, so what? And you reminded me also of a phrase from Course in Miracles. They call it the thunder of the meaningless. Mm-hmm. It just seems so real and so alive. And so I have to put that fire out. And if I don't do this, something terrible is going to happen. But it's just a big fat distraction. And if we can just keep our head on straight for a moment, like we bought a property recently, and during the negotiation process, we got a little hot under the collar with our realtor. And so as we raised our voice, she softened her voice. And the louder we got, the softer she got. We didn't yell, but, we're upset. And so I learned a great lesson. Somewhere in the Bible, it says a soft answer turns away wrath. Mm-hmm. And what she was doing was she was centering us and getting us back to the vibration of, okay, what's really going to make this work here? So if in the heat of an upset or a craving or something that's just got you sucked in. If you could just take a breath and remember, there's a lesson for Course in Miracles. I can see peace instead of this. And I use that often. I get stuck in traffic. Okay, I can see peace instead of this. My partner says something that I'm like, okay, at this moment, if I really wanted, I could choose peace. Well, let me try that on for size. How would it feel if I chose peace instead of this upset? Oh, wow, that feels pretty good. So that's a method I use.
Yeah, and also, I don't know if you found this to be true, but sometimes, I mean, in the past, I used to kind of relish being in the misery and relish in the pain and relish in the depression of things. Like, I remember when a girl would break my heart in middle school or high school, I'd literally go home and turn on sad music to wallow in this feeling. Like, I don't want to feel good. I just want to wallow and reinforce my pain. What is it? I mean, did you feel that? Did you ever do that when you were growing up?
Oh yeah. Well, misery loves company, including your own, And so it's like, there is a reward. The ego does throw lots of rewards our way, saying, you get lots of sympathy, you get money, you get, there's lots of rewards for being sick or upset. And at some point, the rewards of peace begin to exceed the rewards of upset. That's a big tipping point for a lot of us. I think in the New Testament, Paul said, when I was a child, I enjoyed the toys of childhood, but now I'm a man, I enjoy the rewards of manhood. What he was saying, that at some point we have to put aside the toys of self-indulgence and misery and wallowing and say, no, it's not really going to get me what I really want. There has to be some higher reward. Now,
is there any advice you can give in how to overcome the powerful pull of the ego? And it's such a rascally little thing, the ego, because at certain times it's very blatant and you could see it coming a mile away.
Yeah.
But boy, it seems to work behind the scenes in ways that by the time you realize it's already too late, you're like, oh my God, it has been ego this whole time. You got me again. Just when you think you're evolved, I've been meditating. I've been spiritually enlightened and all of this. And then all of a sudden you're just like, someone points out, this is ego. I'm like, son of a bitch, it's ego again. It got me.
The ego is unbelievably crafty and tricky, like a Wile E. Coyote. It just does not stop. So when I was in high school, Alex, we took a trip to Washington, D.C. I lived in New York, and for our class trip, our senior trip. And they took a big picture of everybody on these they put you on these huge wide bleachers, and they take a picture of your class with a capital in the background. So the yearbook comes out. My buddy says, Alan, do you notice anything unusual about this picture? I don't know. He says, look at the left side and look at the right side. Well, there's on the top tier, there's two guys, Arnie Goldstein and Jeff Meltzer. And then on the right side of the whole bleachers, there's Arnie Goldstein and Jeff Meltzer again. So I said, how did they do that? He said, well, they knew the trick. In those days, they had a camera that panned real slowly across the whole senior class. And they knew the trick that after the camera passed them, they could jump down behind the bleachers, run to the other side, and get back on the other side, and be in the picture again, which they did. So many years later, I realized that's how the ego works. Like, you shine the light on it, and the moment the light is not on it, it goes to some other place and tries to trick you from the other side. So your description of the ego is absolutely correct. All I can say is that you just have to start noticing how bad it feels when you're in ego and how good it feels when you're not. And you have to start noticing it in more and more subtle moments in the beginning before it sinks its roots in. And the good news, I guess we could say, is that you're going to get the lesson one way or another. If you don't get the whisper, you're going to get the slap. But like your COVID, right? So eventually you're going to get it one way or the other. So I pray every day, please Please let me get it more easily. So I don't need the slap. Thank you very much.
The slap. How about the baseball bat across the head,
How
or the
about the 2x4?
or the car that just crashes on top of you, like
Yeah.
like the piano that falls from the ceiling.
Well,
like
it's
a
whatever
cartoon.
it takes to get your attention. That's the deal. Whatever it takes to get your attention.
And that's something that, I mean, I've learned throughout my life is that sometimes the universe is trying to teach me a lesson.
Always,
And it's always trying to teach you lessons. But there was, but there's the big ones. Let's say there's the little guys, and then there's the big broad stroke lessons of things that we have to work on while we're here. And the
good news is that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So even if you get a huge baseball bat across the head, the good news is that when you process that and come out on the other side, you're going to have a major shift that you wouldn't have had if it was a slower, gentler lesson.
Right, exactly. But many times you can hopefully learn that lesson with the whisper, or the poke, or the hey, maybe you want to look at this. Hey, go, until eventually you just get a punch across the face. And then sometimes it gets even, and I know people who've been continuously punched by larger and larger fists, and continuously don't learn the lesson, to the point where you literally got to be brought to your knees almost. I mean, there was a point in my life where I was a day or two from going bankrupt, and I was very young and made many mistakes financially. And it was finally that there was that moment. They're like, okay, you have not learned, so we're going to bring you to the brink. Till you finally, and I woke up. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore.
What was your lesson? What do you think you got out of that?
Oh, that lesson specifically was that I needed to take responsibility for myself. I needed to grow up, become a man. No one really taught me finances growing up. I didn't have a lot of role models in that world. So I did what I saw, and it was mistakes, a lot of mistakes with credit cards and debt and stuff like that. And ego was all over the place, till finally it got to the point where, like, you're going to go bankrupt, literally. And your life is going to get ruined for a long time unless you change your ways. And I've told the story on the show before, and I think it's something that's very powerful. A day or two before I signed the paperwork, I yelled out to the universe in anger. And I said, look, I don't want to sign these papers, but if you don't send me any help, I'm going to sign these papers. The next day, my first boss called me.
Wow.
And said, hey, man, I don't know if you're looking for a job or not, but they're looking for editors up in West Palm Beach. I lived in Fort Lauderdale at the time. And they're like, I called them and told them about you. They're waiting for you. And I went up, auditioned for the job, got it. And within a few weeks later, I got a second job. And I had to work hard to get out of that hole, but I'm not afraid of work, but I needed the opportunity. And that changed. I never had to sign the bankruptcy paperwork and got myself out of it. Within a year, I was out of it.
Wow.
But see, those are those kind of moments in life. You just go, that couldn't have just been coincidence.
It was an act of grace. I have a book called The Grace Factor. And, many years ago, I had a kind of similar situation. My mother was dying in the hospital. She was not recovering from the surgery. My girlfriend broke up with me. It was the middle of winter in New Jersey, and there was a snowstorm. And from hanging out in the hospital with my mother, I got this, what do you call it? Kind of infection, staph infection.
Oh, lovely.
And my lip blew up. It was ugly. So I went to this doctor, and he lanced it without any anesthesia.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was screaming bloody murder. And I think all the people in the waiting room must have run out. And I went to the pharmacy through a snowstorm. How bad could it get? And the people in line took one of me for antibiotics. They took one look at me and they moved out of the way. They figured this guy needs one. I do. And then when I got to the pharmacist, I didn't have my wallet. He said, "Just take it." Anyway,
just get out of here. Just get out.
Just at that point, the hardest day of my life. And I went home, and in my mailbox was a letter from my spiritual mentor, Hilda. And I was with Hilda for 14 years, Alex, and she never, ever sent me a letter except the one that arrived that day. And it said, Alan, it was like a spiritual love letter. Sure love you, doing good stuff. Keep up the good work. Don't be daunted by anything. You're going to emerge unscathed. It was like a short, motivational letter. Now, what voice told her to write that letter a week or two in advance? And who organized it? So when I opened my mailbox that day, if I could pick one day in my entire life when I would receive that letter, it would have been that day.
Right.
And I call that grace. I think that in spite of our stupidity and our awkwardness, that there is a love and a wisdom that is working behind the scenes to sustain us, love us, protect us, and bring us home.
Yeah, I would agree with you, because there's so many times that in life that you just are, as you get older, you realize this, but there's things that just happen. You're just like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't, when you want something to happen, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's generally for your best.
Yeah.
And then when something happens, you're like, that's not how, what? Like, there's like the story I told you, like, there's no rhyme or reason that he called me. I hadn't talked to him in a few years.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, years later, a couple of years, like 3 or 4 years later, I got to return the favor when he was at the lowest part of his life. Wow. I was able to give him a helping hand. And I told him, I go, I never forgot that. He's like, what do you mean? I go, you saved my life. He's like, I did.
Wow.
I go, yeah, I was about to go bankrupt. If you hadn't made that phone call, I would have signed a bankruptcy paperwork and I would still be dealing with that decision to this day. Wow. And I was able to help him out in an even darker place than I was, which was wonderful to be able to go full circle like that. It is remarkable. Now, we're talking a lot about things that happen to us and mistakes that we maybe continuously make throughout our lives, which could be called patterns. Is there ways or any advice you can give us on how to break these patterns that are not being of service to us? They're not serving us in any way on our path.
Well, someone asked Abraham a similar question. They said, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And Abraham answered, you have no idea what an old dog you are. Meaning that while you tend to identify with your childhood patterns and ongoing patterns and addictions, there is a you, there is a self with a capital S that runs so much deeper than the personality immersed in those patterns. And when you start to connect with that truer self, you gain leverage to shift those patterns. So once again, we're back to meditation and prayer and Course in Miracles and yoga and walking in nature and watching uplifting movies and watching your podcast. Anything you can do that lifts you to a higher vibration will empower you to shift those patterns. Now, there's another angle on it. Ram Dass once said, he said, spiritual masters are just as neurotic as the rest of us, but to them, their neuroses are irrelevant.
That makes me feel a little bit better.
And as you've hung out with, I've hung out with a lot of the top teachers and gurus and masters, and they all have some shtick. Right. They smoke, they argue with their wives, some of them have sex things going on, they have money issues, not that they're major, but they have stuff going on. So a lot of us would say, oh my God, when am I ever going to overcome my lust? And, these guys have lust and they don't worry about it. They don't fight it. They don't make it wrong. They remember who they are most of the time. And when they forget, they come back to who they are anyway. So, I pray to, every day to stay in my highest mind and live in the highest vibration. When I don't, I ask, okay, what's the lesson here? And can I love and accept myself anyway, even while I'm doing this, and not use this pattern or addiction to distract me from my higher self? And both of those angles help me, Alex. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my idea.
Yeah. Well, I've always been fascinated by quote unquote gurus. And I've studied a lot of Eastern philosophy and the actual real word, what the real true word means of the word guru and in the classical sense in Eastern philosophy. It's really interesting because you have hung out
Yeah,
and been in the presence of many of these gurus.
I have.
While they're here, to my understanding, and I've spoken to some gurus as well, while they're here, they are man. They
Yeah,
have everything that we all deal with. They are not special. They have
yeah,
ego. They have all of the things that we deal with. They have just a different understanding
yeah,
of the game, a little bit better, and they're able to transcend a lot of the stuff that we hold on
yeah,
to. So
yeah.
they're just a bit ahead of us in many ways.
Exactly. Exactly.
What is your experience with gurus and understanding their, because a lot of people think gurus are just like they sit on top of the Himalayas,
Yeah,
floating, and they know all and are all. And
yeah,
that's not, from my experience, even with someone like Yogananda,
yeah,
who had to go through some stuff. I
yeah,
mean, there's people I always find it fascinating that people think that you're just born
yeah.
enlightened. Not one master that's ever walked the earth was born that way. Jesus, Buddha, Mohammed,
Yeah,
none of them. They
yeah,
all had to go through their lives
yeah.
to teach what they've learned along their own
Exactly.
path. Is that your experience as well?
Well, we tend to romanticize gurus and think they're perfect all the time and everything they say is perfect. And maybe a lot of it is, but they do have the human side. And I think it doesn't serve us to try to put them on a pedestal and make ourselves lower than them when we're all, and in the Course in Miracles, Jesus says, I'm your elder brother who has walked the same path you're walking, and I've walked it a little ahead of you, and now I want to show you the way so you can join me as an equal peer. And I think that's a much more sane approach to a Christ or a Buddha or any guru, Yogananda. I have a new book coming out of the fall called The Mystical Messiah, and I'm redefining Jesus as one of us who graduated a little earlier than us, and he wants to show us how to get out. And he's not looking for our worship, he's looking for our worthship.
Oh, nice.
And to make Jesus a God above you is to belittle the God that is in you. And so we want to identify with the Christ in us instead of falling at the feet of Jesus. Now, a lot of Christians would say that's heresy.
Yes.
but there's, Yogananda and Hilda, and even Jesus said, even greater things than I shall you do.
Right.
So if we're less than Jesus, how can we do greater things than him? So what I'm trying to do in this new book is to level the playing field so we identify with God rather than a miserable human.
That's a beautiful. I love that. I can't wait to read that book because it's something it's a message that needs to be put out there. And I think more and more that idea is becoming more and more popular, and we're going away from the dogmatic religious infrastructure that has been with us for thousands of years. And look, for some people, if it works for you, God bless. Right. Go. Exactly. It works. Exactly. But if you just look at the actual teachings of Jesus, and everything, even in the Bible, which is not perfect. In many ways, it was written by man and translated 1,000 different times from different languages. So there's might be a little bit of things that got skewed along the way. But even in that, Jesus, like you said, everything I can do, you can do, and more, makes so much more sense that we're all on the same path, that some of us are just ahead. So it's as simple as, I'll use my industry, the one I work in with, is the film industry, as an example. Like, I've been on set for hundreds, if not thousands of hours of my life. I've been in the business for over 25, coming on 30 years. I probably know a few things that someone starting on that path? Does it? No. Am I
Exactly.
an absolute master expert? No. But I'm ahead of a lot of people purely
Yes.
because I've just walked the path longer, you know? And, when I get to talk to some of these, very big Oscar winning people, when I talk to them, we have conversations on par. Yeah, they've won Oscars and they've probably spent, hundreds of millions of dollars on their movies, and I haven't. But it's this, at the end of the day, it's a camera, it's a lens, it's an actor, it's a story.
Yeah.
And so to think of gurus and to think of spiritual masters as anything but someone who's a bit ahead of you is it's tough. I think I love your idea and the way you're approaching it.
Well, guru is spelled Guru. So, true guru doesn't say worship me. It says Guru, worship the God and yourself. Ramana Maharshi said guru, God, and self are one. And a true master really wants to empower the students rather than gather power for the master. Do you know Bob Ross? Have you seen Bob Ross painting on?
Of course.
He was a wonderful painter. He had a big series on PBS. Yeah.
And that new documentary on Netflix was fascinating.
I purposely didn't watch that, but maybe I should watch it.
You absolutely should. I feel it does nothing but good things for Bob.
Oh, good.
So Bob comes out shining like an angel in that documentary.
Good. I'll have to watch it.
But the people around him have many more karmic lessons to learn in lifetimes to come, sir. That's all I got to say about that.
That's a good way to hold that. Anyway, we watched lots of Bob Ross videos. His energy is so sweet. And in one of the YouTubes, one of the commenters said, Bob Ross didn't paint to show us what a great painter he is. He painted to show us what great painters we can be.
Yes, it's exactly.
And to me, that's the mark of a true guru, that they want to invite the students or the disciples to rise to meet them in their own greatness instead of, trying to live in reflected glory.
Oh, that's a great way of looking about it. Because if anyone who's ever seen Bob Ross, he was all about teaching you how great it's easy little trees, simple little trees, as he would say. Beautiful little. I want to put a little tree here. I'll put a little mountain there, and the way he would do it is so quick.
Yeah.
And when you watch the documentary, you'll understand the technique because they go deep into the kind of painting he would do, wet on wet paints and all this kind of stuff. But it was fascinating because he truly wanted to teach and democratize this thing of like, you fight, canvas paintings and oil paintings, or, that's Michelangelo, that's Van Gogh, that's these masters. No, any of you can do it. And this is how he did. It was fascinating to watch, but that's a great way of looking at it. And that's what a good teacher does. It's not about the glory of, look, I don't know about you, but there are Bob Ross paintings, if you can find originals, are worth something purely because of his fame. Yeah. But his legacy is not his art. His legacy is teaching others to be great.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, you've had Bashar, you've had Daryl Ank on your show. Mm-hmm. I spent thousands of hours with Bashar, some in person and lots of videos. And he coaches lots of people. And he never takes credit for the students' advances. Like they'll say, Bashar, thank you for opening my heart. Well, thank you for opening your own heart. Bashar, you changed my life. Well, I give you full credit for changing your life. I'm happy to support you, but you did it. And he will never accept empowerment for stuff that the clients did. And so that's why I love him, because he's always empowering the students rather than himself. He knows he's powerful. He doesn't need any more power. He wants to empower his students.
Yeah. And I think if you are a person if you've got to tell people that you're powerful, you truly are not powerful.
Truly.
That's in any scope of life. If you have to say, do you know who I am? You're obviously not that big of a deal. It's the quiet one who doesn't have to say a word.
Exactly.
That you just understand that person is powerful.
When your work speaks for itself, don't interrupt.
Right. Exactly. Now, we've talked a lot about, connecting with yourself and connecting with your higher self. Do you have any advice on how we can better connect with our higher selves, our true nature, so we have more of those glimpses, and there are less glimpses and more of the norm, and then we have glimpses of the crap that we deal with down here.
Well, I think it's very unique to each individual, Alex. I mean, for a lot of us, it's meditation or prayer or journaling or Course in Miracles or yoga or Tai Chi, and those are all very valid ways to connect. But I'm always telling people, anything that brings you true joy is a way of connecting. If it raises your vibration to read a certain magazine or have a certain hobby or hang out in a certain area, then do it, because everything is vibration. Tesla said that if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. And so anything that lifts you to a vibration where you feel connected is valid. I ran a retreat once, and there was a lady sitting in the lobby before bedtime. She was reading Emergency Magazine, True Stories of Ambulance Calls. So I said, Josephine, how could you come to a spiritual retreat and read that? She says, oh, well, I'm on the rescue squad, and this gives me good ideas. I find it inspiring. So for her, that was a spiritual exercise. I wouldn't read that. It wouldn't touch me, but I cannot afford to judge what brings her true joy, and no one gets to judge me for what brings me true joy. So the simple answer is anything that lifts your vibration to a more joyful connection to your spirit is a valid spiritual path, and do it as much as you can. Make that main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question that I believe I know the answer to, but I know I get asked this a lot, and I'd love to hear your perspective. Why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, let's hear your answer.
I think my answer to that is that we all have lessons, and those bad things are considered the concept of good and bad is absolutely perspective. I always use the example, when you get into a car accident, it could be the worst day of your life, but when you take it to the mechanic, it's the best day of his. So it's all relative. It's the action is the action and has no negative positive charge. We're the one to apply a negative or positive charge to it.
Exactly.
And it's wonderful to say that in this space where I am right now, where I'm not in a car accident, nothing horrible other than me dealing with COVID right now. But COVID is neither evil nor good. It is what it is. Yeah. It is a tree. It is the sun. It's just is. We're the ones that apply good or evil to the concepts of good and evil. So that is my definition, that if something negative or perceived negative happens to us, it's there to teach us a lesson, whether we want to learn that lesson or not. The larger the thing, the deeper the lesson that we need to learn, or the more resilient we've been or resistant we've been to learn that lesson.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there. And you say whether we want to learn or not. Well, you do want to learn it on the spiritual level, the soul level.
Yeah.
It was a choice. The personality, I don't want to be in a car accident. Who does? But on a soul level, okay, there's some gold in this for me. This is going to advance my spiritual evolution in some way and or help others as well. So, many people have gone through hard stuff and they end up becoming great spiritual teachers as a result of the lessons. So it's a very limited perspective what's good and bad. Of course, we all want good, but we have to trust that when something bad happens, that there's some gem in it that's waiting to be plumbed. Yeah,
I mean, you look at some stories in history where something really horrible happens to people, and it defines their life in a good way because they go off to teach or to help other people. I had a guest on a while ago that went through extremely traumatic experience, abuse when they were younger. Yeah. And that event or events that happened during the time in her life completely changed her trajectory in life, where now all she does is help people deal with trauma and deal with these kind of things. So if she wouldn't have gone through this horrible thing, she wouldn't be bringing so much good in the world. And I asked her straight, I go, would you want to change it? And she's like, no, because it is who I am. And all the bad things that have happened to me in my life, Many people ask me, would you want to go back and change it? My first book was about how I almost made a $20 million movie for the mafia. And I was traumatized by a bipolar gangster threatening my life on a daily basis for over a year.
Oh, no.
And it was so traumatic. It took me years to come out of it. And that's when I almost went bankrupt. It was a really difficult, it's still the vibrations of that event when I was in my early 20s still ring to this day. But I wrote a book about it. I was able to release it. And then I kind of look back and I people go, why do you do what you do? I go, I've always wanted to help people avoid the pain that I went through. So my other shows that I have in the filmmaking space are direct. There's a direct line to that horrible event because I wanted to help people avoid just mistakes and pitfalls and things that could hurt them. And I did that on a subconscious level. And I'm now doing it again, but in the spiritual space as well.
It's a beautiful thing. You know, you turned your hardship into compassion. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Joseph Campbell, he talked about the hero's journey. I'm sure you're quite familiar with it.
Sure.
And he said that when you have your hero's journey, you go through trials and tribulations, you come out on the other side. But that's not the end of the journey. He says, when you've captured the Holy Grail, which is the jewel of wisdom that your hardships engendered, then it's your responsibility to bring it back to the community. Nobody grows spiritually just for him or herself. So when you come back and you teach and you save people the same hardship you went through, so then it's full circle and it has a lot bigger purpose in your own spiritual growth because it extends and multiplies to lots of other people.
Agreed. I mean, if I would have learned all those lessons and not taught it, it wouldn't have the same impact.
It would have been meaningless, and you can't not do it. I mean, I work with lots of people in AA, and people who've been through so many hardships, and they can't imagine just going in a hole and hiding out. They must share what they've learned. It just has to spill over. It's just a part of nature to extend healing to everyone they meet.
I mean, if you survive the tiger down by the river, an attack, you're not going to go back to the village and go, so you guys have anything to do? Like, you're going to say, okay, guys, look, there was a tiger.
Yeah.
He attacked me. This is how I defeated the tiger. So maybe you guys don't have to die. It's an inherent nature for us to try to teach and share. Yeah. That's how we've survived as long as we have as a species, is that ability to do so. But you're right. You can't just sit on it. Generally speaking, there's always exceptions, but generally speaking, there's something inside of you that you want to get it. You want to give.
You know, compassion is a very lofty spiritual trait. And when you go through a hardship like you did and you gain compassion through it, that's a blessing to everyone you touch afterwards. They're just lining up, waiting to be saved the trouble you went through. So what a beautiful gift you're sharing.
I try to do what I can, sir. Now, the concept, I want to hear your definition of the concept of I am. What is the I am?
Well, it's our true self. It's our true divine identity. It's beyond personality. It's beyond body. It's beyond human experience. It's just the you and I that we are, independent of anything that happens in the dualistic world. It's just our God self that's founded and anchored in truth. It's just who we are. Everything else comes and goes, but the I am doesn't move. It doesn't budge.
Now, what is your definition of consciousness?
It's the point of awareness. Someone said that God grew a nose. God is a flower that grew a nose to smell itself. Meaning that, you know, we are each God looking at the universe through a different set of eyes to appreciate and to learn. And so consciousness is the point of attention that looks out at the universe, touches the manifest world, and imbibes it in order to connect with the high self, in order to remember who we truly are.
Alan, I want to ask you a question. Because I'm fascinated and curious about what your perspective is on this. When you first discovered these truths in your life, when you finally took the blue pill, and was it the blue pill, the red pill? I forgot which pill it was. But you take the red pill, I think it is, and you discovered, oh my God, this is the Matrix, and oh, I am who I am, the I am, and all of this. What did that feel like? Because I know many people listening are still trying to find that awareness of that truth within their own lives. What did that feel like? And what was the understanding that you were able to grasp at that moment?
I took a pilgrimage to France, and I went to, we took a group to the Church of Saint Teresa of Lisieux in France, one of the patron saints of France. And on the way out, there's a sign that said, "To the crypt." That crypt sounds like Edgar Allan Poe, but I went in anyway. And this is where the remains of Saint Teresa are held. And I sat down and I meditated. And during my meditation, I was lifted out of my body. Now, it wasn't like Casper the Friendly Ghost where I was just floating around somewhere. It was that my body disappeared. I wasn't trying to make this happen. It just happened as a gift. And I went into such a big mind that I realized a couple things. One is that all there is love. It's just all there is. And the physical universe is dust. It's just like there was just, it was so minute compared to all that really is. Life and death. And that it's like, I don't know how to, it's so hard to describe. It's just like my mind became one with the mind of God for a little while. I thought, this is pretty cool. I'm never going anywhere again. But then, of course, 10 minutes later, I was back in my body. And I just had this knowing of the bigness of it all. I became the bigness of it all. And that experience was etched so deeply in me, Alex, that even though I came back and I've had lots of ups and downs and dramas in life, that was so real and so true that nothing I've ever done in the physical world can supersede it or deny it. It was just a deep knowing of all is well. I am one with God. There's no problem, and let the good times roll. It was just an expansive knowing that it was a gift of grace. I didn't do it. I didn't make anything happen. It was just God was saying, "Okay, here's your gift. Run with the ball now."
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, and I had similar experiences in my life as well, where there's that moment when you go, "Oh, okay, this is okay. I get it now." I've had many near-death experiencers on the show. I'm fascinated to always talk to people who had near-death experiences because they get to do that in an extreme level. Right. You were able to meditate and find, I'm calling it like dipping the toe in the universe kind of vibe that you were able to get. They get to see a whole other part of knowing or understanding that changes them absolutely dramatically, from atheists to people, agnostics, to everybody, and they come back with a completely new knowing. And it always fascinates me to talk to them because you can't not be changed by an event like that.
Exactly.
They're the extreme, obviously, hopefully we don't have to all die and come back to be able to do this. Or you could be meditating in a crypt in France. I could just be meditating on my couch or walking through the forest or something along those, or have a dream even. Which brings me to my next question, dreaming. What's your perspective on dreams? What do they mean to us? Are they messages, things like that?
I think there are many different levels of dreams, Alex. Some are just working out subconscious stuff from the day. So if you have a conflict or a scare and that goes into your subconscious, your inner being is processing and trying to cleanse that experience that you did not process consciously. And even if it's a bad dream, there's a processing that's happening that's valuable. I think another level of dreams are visitations from angels or departed loved ones or gurus that are really coming literally to teach you and give you messages. Other levels are just dropping into your deep subconscious knowing, where you're just tapping into guidance about what's up for you in your life. So there's many different levels. I take dreams seriously. I don't think any of them are random.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we work out a lot of stuff in our dream world that we can't get to in our limited conscious world.
Yeah, I won't have to agree with you on every aspect of that answer, because I too, I take them very seriously,
Yeah.
and they never. I always get angry though with my dreams, because it's always an allegory, or a plane crashing. It's really not about a plane crashing. I'm like,
Exactly.
can you just tell me? Can you just, why do we have to play this game of visions of something that you really mean this?
Yeah.
Can you just say, hey man, tomorrow don't get in the car because something's gonna happen. As opposed to like, there's a tree that falls and there's a bunny. What? You have to kind of decipher the dream, and it always, and I have people I talk to about my dreams sometimes, and I give them the dream, and they'll break it down for me. They're like, "What do you think it is?" I'm like, "I think it means this, this, and this," and rarely I actually hit it on the mark according to them, and other times they're like, "Yeah, you're completely off." What it really means, it's don't invest in this. I'm just saying, throwing something out of it, something along those lines.
I mean, you work in films, you work in movies. So movies are like dreams that people come to life, and there's trees and bunnies and good guys and bad guys. And so those are all symbolic ways of working out stuff without doing, the Greeks invented drama 500 years before Christ, because they figured out that by seeing a character go through a catharsis on his own drama, you get to work out your own stuff vicariously. Mm-hmm. And so you can say, well, why do we need to go to movies? Why don't you just get it directly? Well, you could, but this quote, it's like using the illusion of the external world to teach us lessons that we might not get directly.
Okay, I'll let that one go then. All right, that's fine. I'll let that one go. No, because I understand what you mean with movies. It's like, you live vicariously through the events, especially when they're told well and they're directed well and written well and acted well. You feel the pain, you feel the love, you feel the joy, the excitement, and you kind of live through. That's why movies are the visual medium is probably the most powerful art form we have, because it's a combination of almost all the art forms together.
What movie or movies have you seen, let alone worked on, that you feel have delivered the most important spiritual messages to humanity, or to you at least?
Oh, what a great question, Alan. Oh, God. Well, there won't be a surprise by the audience to know that Shawshank Redemption is one of those movies, without question. That is, I feel spiritually, has given a lot to the world. Mm-hmm. The Wizard of Oz.
Certainly
has another one that has a lot of spiritual lessons in that. I have to say Star Wars. Mm-hmm. The original Star Wars, which is as perfect of a story for the hero's journey as anything has ever been created. It is as, I mean, with Joe's help, George really nailed it. That there's some meat and potatoes in that story that we all need to. It's just part of stuff that we all need to understand. Those are the movies that, I mean, and then you start getting into more complex things like The Godfather, which, I mean, people are like, that's a mobster movie. I'm like, yeah, it's a movie about family, and there's so many lessons, and so, I mean, there's a reason why it resonates. With everybody that watches it in one way, shape, or form. That movie resonates, and you ask, why does it resonate? Is it the darker side of us? And we literally see the innocent turn into the monster through the scope of the first two movies specifically. With Michael, who didn't want to be in the business, but inside had the potential to become the Godfather. And so like in choices of our lives, and I can go, Alan, I can go on for hours.
Sure.
So I mean, we can have deep philosophical conversations about movies all day.
Yeah, maybe we should another time, huh?
Another time we'll do a whole episode about the spirituality of the Godfather. But for me, it's the movie that rung to me the most is Shawshank Redemption. It's my favorite, probably my favorite movie, because there's so much beauty in it, wrapped in hell. And I feel that that's such a beautiful analogy for life.
Wow.
Because in many ways, we are in a prison. In many ways, we are trying to escape this prison.
Right.
And that's Andy Dufresne. And that's what we do.
You're actually answering a lot of the questions you asked over the course of our time together. How do we make sense of the physical plane? And how do you stay connected to the spirit? We just said there's so much beauty wrapped in hell. I think it was Dale Carnegie or James Allen who said, 2 men looked out through prison bars. One saw mud, the other stars.
Yeah.
And so even from a starting point of hell, you have the power to elevate your vision and not only see heaven, but bring heaven to earth. Jesus said, on earth as it is in heaven. Now, that tells me that it is possible to have heavenly experiences even while you're living in the earth.
Absolutely.
And we don't need to die to go to heaven, that we can make earth more like heaven if we choose it.
I think we've all had moments of that. I think the key to it is just try to live in those moments longer and longer and longer, as opposed to, they shouldn't be glimpses. They should be the norm.
Amen.
And the glimpses should be the crap.
Amen. Yeah.
Now, Alan, I'm going to ask you 2 questions to ask all of my guests. What is your mission in this life?
My mission is to know myself as a divine being, to remember love and peace as much as possible, and where possible to extend it to others. So I uplift them too where I can.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
Same thing, just remembering who we are and recognize the godness in us and around us as much as possible.
And Alan, where can people find out more about you, your books, your work, and the things that you're doing?
Website, alancohen.com, ALANCOHEN.com.
Alan, it has been an absolute pleasure and honor talking to you, my friend. I know we're going to have to do that episode of the spirituality of the movies.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll get David Hoffmeister to come on as well, because he does that, and we'll have a great conversation. Yeah. But my friend, I appreciate not only you coming on the show, but all the amazing work and spiritual work that you've been doing over the course of your life.
I've had a lot of fun with you, Alex. Thank you so much. You make me laugh. You have a good heart. You have great wisdom. So you're a great teacher in your own right.
Appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.